I'm Jeremy. Today's day 284 of reading. Today I'm reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Let's get started. Please give this video more views. Don't ask. It works. We're on page 423. This whole tournament's supposed to be about getting to know foreign wizards and making friends with them, said Hermione hotly. No, it isn't, shouted Ron. It's about winning. People were starting to stare at them. Ron, said Harry quietly, I haven't got a problem with Hermione coming with Crump. But Ron ignored Harry too. Why don't you go and find Vicky? He'll be wondering where you are, said Ron. Don't call him Vicky. Hermione jumped to her feet and stormed off across the dance floor, disappearing into the crowd. Ron watched her go with a mixture of anger and satisfaction on his face. Are you going to ask me to dance at all? Padma asked him. No, said Ron, and still glaring after Hermione. Fine, snapped Padma, and she got up and went to join Parvati and the Bucksbaddens boys, who conjured up one of his friends to join them so fast that Harry could have sworn he had zoomed him there by his summoning charm. Where is Hermione? Said a voice. Crumb had just arrived in their table, clutching 2 butterbeers. No idea, said Ron maliciously, looking up at him. Lost her. Have you? Ron was looking very surly again. Well, if you see her, tell her I have drinks, he said, and he slouched off. Made friends with Victor Crumb, have you, Ron? Percy had bustled over, rubbing his hands together and looking extremely pompous. Excellent, that's the whole point, you know, international magical cooperation. To Harry's displeasure, Percy now took Padma's vacated seat. The top table was now empty. Professor Dumbledore was dancing with Professor Sprout. Ludo Bagman with Professor McGonagall, Madame Maxime and Hagrid were cutting the wide path around the dance floor as they waltzed through the students, and Karkaroff was nowhere to be seen. When the next song ended, everyone applauded at once more. Harry saw Ludo Bagman kiss Professor McGonagall's hand and make his way back through the crowds, at which point Fred and George accosted him. What do they think they're doing? Annoying senior ministry members? Percy hissed, watching Fred and George suspiciously. No respect. Ludo Bagman shook off Fred and George fairly quickly, however, and spotted Harry, waved, and came over to their table. I hope my brothers weren't bothering you, Mr. Bagman, said Percy at once. What? Oh, not at all, said Bagman. They were just telling me a bit more about those fake wands of theirs, wondering if I could advise them on the marketing. I've promised to put them in touch with a couple of contacts at Zonko's joke shop. Percy didn't look happy about this at all, and Harry was prepared to bet that he would be rushing to tell Mrs. Weasley about this the moment he got home. Apparently, Fred and George's plan had grown even more ambitious lately, if they were hoping to sell to the public. Bagman opened his mouth to ask Harry something, but Percy diverted him. How do you feel the tournament's going, Mr. Bagman? Our department's quite satisfied. The hitch with the Goblet of Fire, he glanced at Harry, was a little unfortunate, of course, but it seems to have gone very smoothly since, don't you think? Oh, yes, said Bagman cheerfully. It's all been enormous fun. How's Barty doing? Shame he couldn't come. Oh, I'm sure Mr. Crouch will be up and about in no time, said Percy importantly. But in the meantime, I'm more than willing to take up the slack. Of course, it's not all attending balls. He laughed airily. Oh, no, I've had to deal with the sorts of things that have cropped up in his absence. You heard Ally Basher was caught smuggling a consignment of flying carpets into the country? And then we've been trying to persuade the Transylvanians to sign the international ban on dueling. I've got a meeting with their head of magical cooperation in the new year. Let's go for a walk, Ron muttered to Harry. Get away from Percy. Pretending they wanted more drinks, Harry and Ron left the table, edged around the dance floors, and slipped out in the entrance hall. The front door stood open, and the fluttering fairy lights in the rose garden winked and twinkled as they went down the front steps, where they found themselves surrounded by bushes, winding ornamental paths, and large stone statues. Harry could hear splashing water, which sounded like a fountain. Here and there, people were sitting on carved benches. He and Ron set off along one of the winding paths hands passed through the rose bushes, but they had only gone a short way when they heard an unpleasantly familiar voice. "Don't see what there is to fuss about, Edgar. Severus, you cannot pretend this isn't happening." Karkaroff's voice sounded anxious and hushed, as though keen not to be overheard. "It's been getting clearer and clearer for months. I'm becoming seriously concerned. I can't deny it." "Then flee," said Snape's voice curtly. "Flee. I will make your excuses. I, however, am remaining at Hogwarts." Snape and Karkaroff came around the corner. Snape had his wand out and was blasting rose bushes apart, his expression most ill-natured. Squeals issued from many of the bushes, and dark shapes emerged from them. 10 points from Ravenclaw. Fawcett. Snape snarled as a girl ran past him, and 10 points from Hufflepuff too. Stebbins, as a boy went rushing after her. "And what are you two doing?" he added, catching sight of Harry and Ron on the path ahead. Karkaroff, Harry saw, looked slightly decomposed to see them standing there. His hand went nervously to his goatee, and he began winding it around his fingers. "We're walking," Ron told Snape shortly. "Not against the law, is it?" "Keep walking, then," Snape snarled, and he brushed past them, his long black coat billowing out behind him. Karkaroff hurried away after Snape. Harry and Ron continued down the path. "What's got Karkaroff all worried?" Ron muttered. "And since when has he and Snape been on first-name terms?" said Harry slowly. They had reached a large stone reindeer now, over which they could see the sparkling jets of a tall fountain. The shadowy outlines of 2 enormous people were visible on the stone bench, watching the water in the moonlight. And then Harry saw Hagrid speak. "Moment I saw ya, I knew," he was saying in an oddly husky voice. Harry and Ron froze. This doesn't sound like the sort of scene they ought to walk in on. Somehow, Harry looked around back up the path and saw Fleur Delacour and Roger Davies standing half concealed in a rose bush nearby. He tapped Ron on the shoulder and jerked his head toward them, meaning that they could easily sneak off that way without being noticed. Fleur and Davies looked very busy to Harry, but Ron, eyes widening in horror at the sight of Fleur, shook his head vigorously and pulled Harry deeper into the shadows behind the reindeer. "What did you know, Hagrid?" said Madame Maxime, a purr in her low voice. Harry definitely didn't want to listen to this. He knew Hagrid would hate to be overheard in a situation like this. He certainly would have. If it had been possible, he would have put his finger in his ear and hummed loudly, but it wasn't really an option. Instead, he tried to interest himself in a beetle crawling along the stone reindeer's back, but the beetle just wasn't interesting enough to block out Hagrid's next words. "I just knew you were just like me. Was it your mother or your father?" I don't know what you mean, Hagrid. "It was my mother," said Hagrid quietly. "She was one of the last ones in Britain. Of course, I can remember her too well. She lived, see, when I was about 3. She wasn't really the maternal sort." "Well, it's not in their natures, is it? Dunno what happened to her. Might be dead for all I know." Madame Maxime didn't say anything, and Harry, in spite of himself, took his eyes off the beetle and looked over the top of the reindeer's antlers, listening. He had never heard of Hagrid talk about his childhood before. "Me dad was broken-hearted when she went. Tiny little bloke, my dad was. By the time I was 6, I could lift him up and put him on top of the dresser if he annoyed me. Used to make him laugh." Hagrid's deep voice broke. Madame Maxime was listening, motionless, apparently staring at the silvery fountain. "Dad raised me, but he died, of course, just after I started the school. Sorta had to make me own way after that. Dumbledore was a real help. Mind, very kind to me, he was." Hagrid pulled out a large spotted silk handkerchief and blew his nose heavily. "So anyway, enough about me. What about you? Which side you got it on?" Madame Maxime had suddenly got to her feet. "It is chilly," she said, but whatever the weather was doing, it was nowhere near as cold as her voice. "I think I will go now." "Eh?" said Hagrid blankly. "No, don't go. I've never met another one before." "Another what? Precisely?" said Madame Maxime, her tone icy. Harry could have told to Hagrid it was best not to answer. He stood there in the shadows, gritting his teeth, hoping against hope that he wouldn't, but it was no good. "Another half-giant, of course," said Hagrid. "How dare you!" shrieked Madame Maxime. Her voice exploded. "Thank you, everyone. That's all for today. Bye. See you tomorrow."